almost 40 years ago now. And probably the first time I was at the school building was a few years after that. I was fortunate enough to have Pastor Cares 33 years ago next summer on July 15th marry me in your chancel here. I married one of the Bublitz girls, Chris Bublitz, and we'll be married 33 years next summer. So it's been a wonderful opportunity to spend a lot of time here at Zion, Christmas and Easter and festival occasions for sure, but lots of baptisms and weddings and confirmations and funerals in this very building, basketball games and fall events at the school building and the like. So very familiar with the congregation. Tom and I have had the opportunity over our careers, both of us have a lot of gray hair and a lack of hair at this point, to have worked on collectively probably over 200 church buildings in our careers and probably upwards of 100 school buildings. So it has been a joint effort between Tom and I to focus on the planning effort. So that's a little bit about us. If you don't know MSA, we're headquartered in Beaver Dam, so we're only a few miles away. I am a member of St. Stephen's in Beaver Dam, and so pretty well understand what the Wisconsin Synod is all about. Some of the first questions we looked at when we approached this study starting over a year ago, you can see up on the slide in front of you. What are the highest hopes for success? If we're going to spend the effort, if you're going to pay us some money, what's the highest hopes for success of this study that we're going through? So that was a question. What's required to make an informed decision? What kind of data has to be gathered? What kind of knowledge of the congregation, what kind of knowledge of where the congregation wants to go in the future needs to be there? What are the strengths of the congregation, Zion Church? What obstacles must be overcome to take on any type of facilities program here at Zion? What is the mission of the congregation? And finally, what is the planning horizon? What's the time frame do we want to plan for? Do we want to plan for the next 5 years, or the next 50 years, or the next 100 years for Zion in this effort? So those are some of the initial questions we looked at when we approached this. From a planning focus, clearly from the get-go, there are things that struck us as architects. Tom and I are both architects and planners when we looked at your facilities here. You have two separate campuses, you know that. It's been well over 50 years since the decision was made to move the school to a different part of Columbus. And before the meeting today, I went up on the balcony just to look at that model that was done 50-some years ago of the church and the school over on that site on the southwest side of town. The age of the facilities. This is one of the great historic architectural buildings here in Columbus, but it's an older building. When I first went to your school 40-some years ago now, or 30-some years ago, it was almost a brand new school. But now your school is not a brand new school. Buildings age over time, and they need repair and maintenance over time. And you've done a nice job of supporting those facilities, but the age of the facilities clearly is something that we took into focus. The ability to support your mission into the future. You are in somewhat of a unique area in the Wells because with the completion of 151 as a major highway from Madison, Columbus is transforming somewhat. You see more new homes, you see more new subdivisions, you see more people commuting back and forth from Columbus to other areas. So the mission of your congregation might be different than it was 100 years ago or more when this congregation was in its early age. Handicapped accessibility certainly is something that is noticeable in this church, in the church building in particular. The main entry is fairly congested. some rather steep stairs. You do have the handicap lift and a side chair, but not good handicap access for all your facilities. Certainly a challenge to get into the lower level for your gathering and fellowship space. Many older buildings have an issue with fellowship space. We notice that at St. Stephen's in Beaver Dam, we have our coffee fellowships either in the gymnasium of the school, which is attached to the building, or in the church basement. But even with us being attached in the same building, oftentimes we'll lose 2/3 of our congregation after church before we start fellowship. So church design has changed over the years, and oftentimes we see the fellowship spaces being a very integral and critical part of planning worship facilities. The lack of parking here at the church campus is something we've worked with for many, many years. There's parking on the street, but that's about it for the parking around the church, and it is limited for a church this size. When we look at the school, the office location is not in a great location compared to the main entry, and there's some issues at the school related to how vehicles and people work together, so some cross-traffic issues. More and more so in school design, security is an issue. How do you protect the staff and the students when they're in the school? And finally, the cost of the solution. Anytime you look at renovating or adding to or building new facilities, there's a cost related to that. So one of the key factors, one of our key focal points in the study was to look at what's the potential cost for renovating or building new might be here. Otto and Don talked a little bit about the process that we went through the last year, but these are really the 4 steps that we follow to do that. And I'll walk you through those steps, and then Tom will talk through the study in detail. The study process resulted in a lot of data being gathered together. And these booklets are going to be available with all the detail, all the data in the church library. But our process did initially include a lot of data gathering. What does that mean? It means helping us understand what Zion is all about. How big are you as a congregation? How has your size changed as a congregation over time? How's the demographics changed? The age of the members of the church, the number of students you have in schools, things like that. Then we went on to analyze the existing facilities. What's good about the facilities you have? What might not be quite so good? What might need improvement along the way? Third point was to do a needs assessment. If you're starting with a clean sheet of paper, how would you design Zion School and Zion Church today? How many classrooms would you have? How big would the sanctuary be? How many parking stalls would you have? What kind of sound systems and lighting and security would you have in the buildings? What kind of heating and air conditioning and the like? So really, what was the needs assessment? And related to that, what's the priority of those needs? What's most important? And finally, we came up with some conceptual solutions, both to renovate your buildings and to